the amount of Canadians, so again, we'll go using that poll that is probably not that valid, saying that like 60% of Canadians want to join the US. I think the bigger question here is why. And the reason why isn't because they hate their country and they want to move. Though I'm not going to lie, Florida sounds very warm right now. The reason why is because of failed leadership. And if you go throughout history, what's one thing that terrorist organizations, revolutions, or even just like militia groups, what's one thing they all have in common? It's not that they hated their country. To the opposite, it's that they loved their country and they were being ruled by somebody who was not meeting basic needs. And that's exactly the same case here. So I think the bigger question should be, whoa, if 60% of Canadians allegedly are saying that they want to move, if this is such a big conversation where people are actually so fed up with the way that things are run here and the amount of spending and waste. We're sick and tired of having Justin Trudeau tell us about saving the climate while he's more than okay emitting more than any Canadian, flying his private jet so that he can go skiing in the mountains and get told to F off in the parking lot. So I think that it does just really go back to Canadians are so unbelievably fed up.
James and Justin here, your favorite spiritual analysts and all things culturally relevant. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We've got a political pundit with us. We've got special guest Jasmin Laine from her self-titled YouTube channel. She's also a retired award-winning broadcaster. Now, a lot of her content on her channel focuses around politics, but, we haven't shied away from that. There is a little bit of overlap between spirituality and politics. So I'm sure we're going to get into some interesting topics today.
I'm really interested in the direction that this goes because, her wheelhouse is politics, but she's got an eclectic range of knowledge and things. So this should be cool.
All right, guys, won't keep you waiting. Let's get into it. All right, Jasmin Laine, thank you so much for being on the show with us. Now, we have done kind of an intro for our audience, but I'm sure you can do a better descriptor of yourself. So we'll toss it over to you. Let our audience know a little bit who you are and what you got going on.
So I'm Jasmin Laine. I am a former award-winning broadcaster. I worked in media for 11 years, primarily in radio, had some stints doing some stuff in TV as well. I ended up losing my job over the summer, and I started doing YouTube, largely political content, a little bit before that. Not sure if the two are related or not. I was not given a reason, but nonetheless, I am just kind of a full-time amateur YouTuber now, I guess you could call it. I would say a lot of the stuff that fascinates me the most is politics, but more so than just politics in general would be the mental health aspect. I've had a pretty dark history in regards to suicide and attempts myself, as well as losing my partner of 10 years to that same fate. So I feel like a lot of that really propelled me into talking about politics because it really opened me up to just how much so many of the things that people are upset about and happy about and suffering over, it really does all come back to the same place, which is the political landscape. And that landscape also affects sociology and all of these other things too. So I do lean conservative, though I would consider myself to be a pretty classic liberal by classic definitions, at least, which I guess nowadays means right-wing extremist, which I'm called often. So I like to think I'm pretty normal and just a gal who has the gift of gab, I guess. And yeah, that's what I've been doing as of late.
Well, that's fantastic. Being a spiritual channel, mostly, we talk sometimes about politics, and there is this overlap. And maybe we can just jump right into the deep waters right away. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to separate church from state? Because we always talk about spirituality and religion, all this stuff. There's this thing that's done outside of politics. We don't like to mesh the two because it causes problems. But I see it as impossible to separate. It just gets coded differently. But I'd like to hear your take on that.
Well, I think in terms of religion as a whole, it's been rather fascinating to me being in Canada to see the ways of which state, i.e. governments, have been removing, I guess, traditional Abrahamic faiths from essentially every part of daily life, which they used to be very much involved in. We used to read the Lord's Prayer in the morning at school or hear it. And they've been removing things like that and then replacing them with laws, which I think is rather fascinating. And I think, too, it's almost kind of giving it a bit of this false prophet, like this is your savior, which is really bizarre to me. I think, obviously, yes, you can for sure I think you can remove church from state, absolutely. But does it really work? And is it really something worthy of doing if you're just going to replace church with state laws? Like, in Canada, we have Bill C-63, which is a big one being discussed right now, the Online Harms Act, which, sure, there's a handful of things in there about protecting children online and protecting victims of certain types of online behavior and abuse, harassment. However, we already have laws to protect against that kind of stuff as it is. And that in the entirety of that law was actually really just about reducing your freedom of speech. There's parts of that law, I'm not sure if most people are aware of this, where it actually states that if somebody says that you are likely to commit a hate crime or hate speech crime online, the government can then go and lock you in your house. And they also request samples of your DNA, so probably a urine test or something, which is oftentimes, if you're, a victim of domestic abuse, if you're more likely to be an abuser if you're drinking alcohol. But somehow they tied that into the Online Harms Act, which is being touted as, oh, we're protecting children. And when you think about church, things like that, if you are a religious person and you have the values set out for you, you don't really need laws like that. And we also never really did before, because people had that morality that was just inherently inside of them, because it was something that they were taught through church at a young age. And we're seeing the removal of that, and then the implementation of laws to essentially be church-like. It's the same things that we learn through biblical text, only in the form of laws, which I think is just really scary, maybe kind of evil. It's really bizarre to me. Like, okay, yeah, we can agree that clearly there's some things that human beings should and shouldn't do. We always knew that. It's a part of that scripture and that text that goes back, since the beginning of time in some religions. So it's a really interesting thing to observe at the very least, and something I don't think a lot of people pay enough attention to. And you certainly see all of these things again with that morality of those values that humans just have, where when you don't have church as a major part of your life, you end up oftentimes having less purpose, less meaning in your life, statistically at least. And then also, like, you see all of these crazy things going on in the world, and it's like, well, back in the day when people were actually had something to believe in that was bigger than themselves, that actually put themselves at the bottom of the hierarchy, people weren't doing all of the crazy things that they're doing now. And then by removing that, you instead have a hierarchy of virtue signaling, a victim and oppressor narrative, where people can get away with anything as long as they, represent a certain class that has been deemed a victim. And it's just, I don't know, the whole thing to me is really fascinating to think about, because there's definitely a correlation.
You may have been let go because you're too smart.
That's nice.
But that's okay, because it may have opened up a better opportunity, because I like the way that you're able to balance so many different concepts at once. That's important. Sometimes I get irritated when I see a comment like, anybody that answers a question with a sentence that could have been answered in one word salad, all this bullshit. It's like, just because you can't track what I'm saying doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
But so I like that. You may have answered it in that already, but I guess kind of maybe like an intense question, but I think is room for a cool answer is there ever a reason for intelligent people to apply manipulation, control, corralling of stupider people? Like, is that something that needs to happen? Is there a certain capacity people lack that can only be controlled through governing, and governing that requires withholding of information, and governing that requires like acquiescing to things that are nonsense, but hey, it keeps the people in line?
Hmm. That is a loaded question, and I'm going to do my best to answer it.
I know. I'm sorry, but this
track.
is what I think about.
No, it's an excellent question. You know, morally, intrinsically, my immediate answer is no. I don't think it's good for people as a whole to think that you are above somebody else, to view yourself as more intelligent than somebody else. I do not like pride at all. I'm not a fan of being prideful. And this is maybe to a fault. Like, I have a really hard time saying that, like, I'm proud of something that I did. Like, my brain over the years has just been very rewired to kind of know, like, I'm not doing this for me at all. It's nice that I'm able to keep the lights on in my house as a result of it, especially after the loss of my career. But I think, the whole thing is just about doing your best to speak freely. And if speaking freely for you means that somebody else may appear as though they're dumber, which, I mean, even statistically, IQ rates have been dropping year after year after year. So yes, in fact, there actually are a lot of people that are dumber and very susceptible to all sorts of manipulation and propaganda and stuff as well. We see that all the time. And you see that on the right as well, too. This is certainly not a left versus right. There's a lot of people on the right who are very loud and very vitriolic and very stupid. So it affects everybody for sure. But I do think that even when you think of that with lowering IQ rates as a generalization there, yeah, I mean, like, what is the path forward? Because if there are people who are so glued to their cell phones, whatever, they just have zero desire to search for anything. And why would you? Humans are pretty herd-like creatures. So why on earth would you, when our mental health, our depression, our suicide rates, all these things are so bad right now? Why would you ever want to do something to begin with that sets you outside of the pack? Which is why I think a lot of people, our youth in particular, you're almost kind of programmed to not question and to not think for yourself, because you have been taught that thinking for yourself means that, Vladimir Putin is your BFF and he's coming to your birthday party, apparently, according to the insults people get these days. So I think it's, yeah, I don't know. That's a really tough one, because again, I certainly there are people out there who should have their eyes opened, who should be exposed and experience more things. I think it's always really bizarre to me, even in terms of like the amount of people that have never left the country or the province, and they talk like they know the whole world. And also I would say traveling even as a whole, and what you learn and how much you learn and what you can take away from traveling is so vitally important to your growth and your human experience. And there's a lot of people where, either they don't want to, they can't get the time off work, or they don't have the money to, which I would say is probably predominantly the factor right now, who don't get that experience, and therefore they are kind of stuck in this bubble, and it's all about what you allow into your bubble. So I suppose I would say that was an incredibly long-winded answer, but I suppose I would say that rather than to teach people, or to go the lengths yourself to try to to try to be better than them or have yourself at a hierarchy above them, I think the best course of action would be to kind of get rid of all of this victim BS that's going on and this oppressor BS, and get rid of the, oh, well, your opinion is so offensive that we're not even going to discuss it, because that's absurd. And I would say to get rid of, I guess, really the woke stuff, the radical woke ideologies that are out there that are convincing people that something is true, even though that thing that they're convincing them of inherently, when we all first heard it, it didn't feel right in our gut, because the truth sounds a little bit differently, and you can feel it and you can hear it. It just has a ring to it, in a way that somebody who's trying to convince you, oh, this is the new truth, believe us, everybody else over there is an idiot, they're radical. I think that I would encourage more so to have open debate and really, really, truly have free speech again. Like, I'm pretty well a free speech absolutist in that regard. And people will say, well, what about child predators? What about people who are doing this and that? And I'm like, yeah, those people are awful, and they're going to have to pay the piper, certainly. But those people also, by being free to live and say whatever it is that they want and believe in. And yeah, and regardless of what hole that takes them down, society as a whole ends up judging those people, right? Like, it's not like you end up having people who are pro something that's really, really bad and they end up manipulating an entire nation. No, those people usually get ostracized because their views are absolutely far gone. And I think that you need to have more of a society approach where all of us are like, I don't agree with that, but thank you for sharing it with me.
The thing that you said about the leaders, like, we have examples of horrible leaders that, like, seemingly a group ushered in. Honesty seems to be something here for me. It's like, when you talk about free speech, it's like, well, am I free to deceive? Am I free to deceive people? And I think that there are some people whose role is a little bit like, in their time, they're going to go through some phases of alienation in order to be authentic. Weird things play a role here. It's so complicated. It's hard to squeeze the truth of something into like a easy soundbite, you know, because the fact of the matter is that when somebody's expressing, like, what if you found that somebody's salvation from from like a depressive state is actually like something that looks an awful lot like anger? Like, when I started expressing my anger, people might go, well, you're vitriolic. You're walking around like a child, interrupting people, and you're red-faced. It's not appealing. Nobody's buying this shtick, but it might save me from doom because I'm like expressing authentically. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm alive. My heart's beating, and I feel connected to my existence here. I know it may be not pleasant, but the alternative is like an implosion or something like that. Social nature, human socialness itself has always been just tricky ground for me because, you know, there are things you can do to be more socially appealing, but are they going to, what's the cost of that? Is it going to make you feel like you're full of shit? Or are you going to be, is that your wheelhouse? Are you like, man, I can lie and that's fine. I can lie till the cows come home and give lots of gifts and be real nice and get along with everybody. I think it's like a personal thing to some degree.
It absolutely is.
Some people can handle that.
Yeah.
Some people can't handle it. Sorry,
well,
that's all I'll say. I don't know. I hope
thank
that made
you.
sense.
That was wonderful. And also, again, something that is certainly thought provoking. My response to that would again be, you know, I think we need to be really gone with the days of people are going to take care of you, and if you mess up, you'll be forgiven. Life is tough, and people do bad things that at times it's very difficult to forgive them for. And even if you do, they may hold that resentment within themselves until the day that they die. And I think that it's really important that, yes, absolutely, if somebody, like, obviously there's laws in place to protect us from people who want to go out and murder people and whatnot. Of course, I'm not at all saying that you should be a part of that. But I do also think it's so important that people recognize even their own patterns of behavior in that regard, because, you know, if you are somebody who is actually acting your age, depending on the time frame of which you're doing this, you can certainly go out and do whatever the hell it is that you want and lie and steal and ruin lives of people around you based on how you treat them. But having said that, if you're a slave essentially to whatever that want or need, it's not a need really, but if you're a slave to whatever that egotistical, prideful thing that's the devil on your shoulder is telling you that you have to do for immediate gratification, if you're a slave to that and you're unable to restrict yourself and see like the bigger picture of, oh, well, my words have consequences, what I do has consequences, and you don't have the space. And obviously children are like that, right? They don't actually have the capacity to think that way yet, which is why you raise them and you kind of train them in a way to behave, which is something that society's been doing forever. So again, it's like, we don't need laws for that kind of stuff. And if you're somebody who has really gone off the rocker because it's impossible for you to realize the long-term effect of every single thing that you do and how much every single thing that you do deeply reflects what's going on with you internally. Like, you might think, oh, well, I just wrote a mean comment to some idiot on the internet. It's not just a mean comment, because every single word that you use reflects you. Every single word does. Like, I frequently will have people who, I did a video a couple months back now about immigration and how there was 14,000 Canadian students, like international students, that applied for refugee status, which is that's so immoral and gross. But also think of that, like 14,000 people who are now backlogging a system, who are already in Canada, who do not meet the requirements, and they knew that when they filed, but they filed anyway because selfishly they wanted to get ahead of the line and they didn't want to go home, as I'm sure they never did from the moment that they first came here. And my take on that was saying how I think it's so immoral and so cruel to do something like that, something so selfish. Like, I get it, you don't want to go back home. If this had happened, 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have blamed you. These days, though, I find a lot of Canadians are wanting to leave. But I understand the process there. But again, it's the inability to think about the long term, and to also recognize and apply to your life that every single thing that you do has a reaction, is positive or negative. And you should really be weighing out those options in your brain before you do just about anything. And that was my take on this particular subject. And I remember so many people were coming at me saying like, "Oh, this is so racist." And again, I'm like, it's yeah. And again, I'm like, well, that's a deep reflection of you, because that didn't even cross my mind. So you can say whatever you want about me. I know that that's not true. And if you think that's racist, like, I feel sorry that's how you view the world, and that you have been so indoctrinated into this victim and oppressor narrative, and you feel inclined to say something so horrible about somebody who is sharing, what I like to think is a pretty rational, reasonable response, of people just being selfish and not being able to control that thing that's telling them to do this, even when they know that it's wrong. And so again, I really think that as a whole, society does judge you for the way that you behave. And even people, people who are narcissistic, as an example, I've had my fair run-in with people like that have, holy man, they have pushed me to the brink. And like, I don't use this lightly at all, and I hate this word, but truly, I'm like, I have had people that have played games with my brain to such an effect that, like, I actually feel like I have PTSD from it sometimes. Like,
I think narcissistic behavior creates borderline personality disorder in some, like, I believe there's some evidence for that.
Yeah, well, just they totally play with your head, right? And it's evil. It's really evil what people like that can do, and especially too, depending on your own personality, your own upbringing, the way that some people can fall victim to that and actually think that like everything that they do is wrong, when in reality, no, you're actually a great person. You just have somebody really evil with you. And so even in regards to that, like, yeah, sure, they can lie and manipulate and fool their way to the top. They're often very good talkers. Sorry, they're very articulate. But at the end of the day, like, you always have to pay the piper. And you often notice with people who behave in such a way as well, that as time goes on, you'll see, if you know any of them. I mean, most people who know them and they call them out or whatever, they kind of push you out as it is, or you remove yourself from the situation because it is just destructive to your own mental health. But if you ever check in on those people, like, you will see over the years, and sometimes it takes a long time. It's something I say all the time, because like, good, at the end of the day, good, and having like a really deep what's the word I'm looking for, a deep pursual, that's not a word, I don't know, we're using it, to do what's good and what's moral, and to have that as your highest aim, that always wins. And it often feels like it doesn't, because evil will go to lengths that good could never even imagine to win. But good,
casually sometimes.
Yeah, right. But good plays the long game, and good does always win. And you see that with really evil people sometimes. Like, it may seem like they're getting away with things for a long time, but eventually, and maybe it's 20 years later, who knows, eventually they do pay the piper. And eventually, once I'm almost done my point here. And eventually, you'll see that, maybe they went through a divorce, their children don't speak to them anymore, they don't have the friends that they used to, they have a bad reputation. Like those things always play its course.
So many things, so many good things that you just said there.
What are you talking about? I'm just a political gal.
No, you know what you're talking about. And I think that the word good and evil could be sort of synonymous with some other words. Like I've been thinking a lot about evil, and I think that oftentimes evil really, if you think about it, is sort of synonymous with ignorance or even sometimes like lack of knowledge or maybe even lack of intelligence sometimes. But I think honesty could be a big help for us here, because I got to plot myself somewhere. Even if I'm a prideful, narcissistic a-hole, if I'm honest with myself, I could go like, okay, I might be here, but there's like this many people smarter than me. And there might be this many people stupider than me. It doesn't mean I have no value. It doesn't mean that I'm relegated to certain tasks now. Like, well, if you're that amount smart, then I guess you're just going to be carrying my garbage forever. Like, I don't even think it means that. I just think it's an honest reflection of where you're at capacity-wise, And so I think honesty could help us out a lot. But how do you make sure everybody's honest? You can't. But I agree with what you said, that you pay the piper in the end. And one of the, maybe it's nature's for us so that we don't go extinct. What I find is if you are given to like, it's easy, like cruelty is casual for me, man. I can be cruel, I can lie, I can do this. I think the psyche turns on itself because we are part of a collective. There's kind of a collective subconscious. We are connected with each other. The social nature is important to us. And if you become sensitive to it, I don't think you need to fret about your intelligence or your capacity or whatever gift somebody has that maybe you don't have. If you're honest and you do orient yourself towards like earnestness and good, whatever goodness is, and honesty, I think that you're protected in something. And I do think it's a matter of the long game, because it looks so dire for so long. Maybe even, decades things can look dire, but in the end it resolves.
All right, I'm jumping in. Okay.
Sorry.
I know. You mentioned early, like right at the beginning, you tend to skew right wing. And I enjoy watching politics. To me, it's like the best soap opera there is going. And so,
oh my gosh, the House of Commons is hilarious.
Oh my gosh, Americans think they have a good politics, but watch some Canadian politics. It's been fantastic lately. But it's interesting, as I kind of tend to see myself sometimes as an outsider looking in, and to see the oscillating shift between parties, like left to right. I feel like here in Canada, we went through a long liberal spell, and now the sway is kind of turning conservative. And there's a lot of social media people like yourself. I've been following, other people, like, I don't know if you watch other rising YouTubers like
constantly.
Perspective, Mr. Sunshine Baby. I see you kind of in there too. You're like one of those, you guys are all rising. Is it that we are all just simply becoming more aware of what's going on? Are we requiring more honesty out of our politicians just by the sheer knowledge that we're sharing amongst ourselves? Like, what is causing it? Seems like there's this massive shift in politics right now all over. Like, I don't know if you watch other world, like I know in Germany, they just had like a fall. In France, the States just had their election. Yeah. Canada, it's clear that there is I think a conservative tsunami coming. But yeah, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, I think to the earlier point made as well, sure, there's been a lot of really bad leaders over history. Some may argue we currently have one, but there's been a lot of really bad leaders over history. And what is something that they were able to do that they cannot do now? And that was to completely isolate their humans, their population, to completely isolate people. With the rise of social media and stuff, it's very easy for propaganda on both sides. It certainly exists everywhere to really take footing and get solid ground. But also with the rise of social media, there's so many other perspectives and opinions out there that humans would otherwise not know, right? Yeah. And so you think about North Korea as an example. This is fresh on my mind because I just finished watching a documentary about how North Korea became what it is today. But one of the first things that they did is, it was after the war and people were really struggling. There was the Japanese war and they were absolutely humiliating North Koreans and doing some really horrible things to them. The US goes and launches all these nukes on Japan, and voila, the war is over. Now what do we do? And of course, I'm going to say his name wrong, but one of the other gods of the North Korean people who doesn't pee or poo, according to what they say, Kim Jong-sun or Sim Kim. I said Kim. Oh my God. Let's stop trying that. We'll just
This is the
bleep
Wild
that
West.
out.
This is YouTube. Just do whatever you want.
But with the Kim Il-sung, I don't know, whatever. I just watched this, but it's fine. I don't know anything. But one of his first things is that he had decided that he really wanted to be a revolution for the people, and that they had really wanted to get rid of the divide, because what had happened is the Soviet Union took over North Korea, America took over South Korea. And that was the revolution, is that they wanted all Koreans to be united again. More importantly, more deeper, is that he wanted to be the one ruler over Korea. And they had all these wars, minor wars. There was a lot of people who died, I believe, when he tried to take over South Korea. I think it was around 1 million North Koreans who perished, and they gained absolutely nothing. But the reason why he was able to do that is because he had completely isolated his people. And even today, you see that, where they have they have restrictions on everything. It's punishable by public execution to have access to outside sources. And, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a woman named Eun-mi Park. She's a North Korean defector.
Yes.
Who she's
She was on
amazing.
Joe
I've
Rogan.
reached out to her. Yeah, she was. Yeah. I reached out to her actually not very long ago to chat. We'll see. I don't know. You miss 100 of the shots you don't take. So
That's right.
but she spoke of it so brilliantly, in just how big of an effect isolating your people into these echo chambers has. And what did North Korea do that was very effective is when they learned that there was some military dissent, when they learned that the public was kind of opposed to what they were doing, they went and sent people off to the camps. And then they also punished their families. And I can't help but kind of see some similarities with what we're experiencing here as well in terms of cancel culture. You have individuals who, by all accounts, most of the ones that make viral news are usually people saying some pretty common sense, rational things that just oppose the narrative. And then you have individuals who are younger and easy to manipulate, who kind of grab hold. And yes, there's all of this information out there, but they're in an echo chamber. And algorithms as well on social media have done horrific things to feed into that, because they show you the things that you engage with the most. And it's hard to really go out there and find new information. But so you have people who, let's say they said something about LGBTQIA plus, I missed the 2S, but like, let's say they say something about that. And the community decides, oh, well, we hate them, they're an enemy of ours, and they'll go and push to their masses, let's dox this person. We're gonna, what's that called where you call in like a bomb threat in the United States? I forget what that's called.
Oh, I know what you're swatting.
Yeah, or we're going to do that. And people do it. And because everything is found online, people are able to then find their address. They're able to find out who their children are, who their wife is, who their siblings are, where they work. And you see people doing very similar things. Sure, they're not being sent to camps, but there is absolutely this radical motion to completely shut up dissenting voices, and also completely isolate the news so that we can't see everything. Like, even as a Canadian, I can't remember which bill this is. I want to say it's like C11, but I think that's wrong, or C16. I don't know. But one of the first bills about free speech, and this one had to do a lot. This is what made Jordan Peterson famous. This one had to do a lot with pronoun usage and things like that. And even that bill, I totally lost my train of thought. Crap. Take two. Okay. So even that bill, though, when that was first implemented, it was certainly used as a way to silence people, and to shut up dissenting voices. And then we also had the news bill, which this is one of my biggest problems with governments as a whole. This is not at all specific to Canada, but bills are written so dishonestly, really, because they will say, oh, well, this is I'll go back to the online harms thing. This is to protect children. Well, you read the contents of the bill and no, it's not. So thankfully, since then, they have split apart the bill. But they still plan to pass the whole thing at one point or another, which is just ludicrous. It's very UK. I don't think anybody who knows what that actually looks like and what that kind of control has, I don't think anybody who is aware of that is going to be voting in favor of it. But again, you have people who aren't aware of it, thanks to algorithms, thanks to their echo chambers, thanks to the fact that the vast majority of people are sheep, and to be a lion risks being excluded, and most people don't want to do that. And it's just, I don't know, the whole thing is just really crazy to me. And in terms of news too, we had a bill that came out a few years back, and it was it was to help Canadian content creators make more money, allegedly.
That was C11. I think that was Bill
Was that
C11.
one? Okay, I couldn't remember. There's too many C's. They really got to start picking a different letter here because it's getting confusing. But that bill, though, even I was working in media at the time. I was working as a broadcaster, and I recall discussing it with my co-hosts and saying, like, this is crazy, actually. And they pushed this bill, which was to make it so that we had fair play, because apparently having access to the entire world wasn't fair play. All of these social media companies pushed back against it because that is insane to expect them to pay you when they're not paying anybody else except for Australia. Australia did pass a similar bill at one point in time, which is still in effect, but it's very, very different. But like, why on earth would they pay us? And they said that they weren't going to. And of course, the governments knew that that was going to be the response because it's insane. And what happened instead? Well, now those same Canadian content creators that you wanted to help, now their accounts got blocked, and because it's news. And now actually the result of that is that Canadians have less access to information than they did before, which how can you not know that that's going to be the end result? And even if you didn't know that that was the end result, if that wasn't the intent, then make amendments to the bill. Right? But they haven't. It's been years now. And I can assure you that as a broadcaster at the time, not a single one of us received any additional money from the federal government, which they have been collecting from other social media outlets that complied. So where is that money going? Exactly. Because it certainly is not going to help local content creators.
What were some of the things that went along with that? Like, didn't it also mean that you had to talk about certain issues or had to cover certain issues as well? Like, certain things had to be included if
that already, because Canada is under the Canadian Broadcast Association. And so we already have, especially for public entities, like if you're just a creator on your own, it doesn't really matter. But there is percentages of Canadian content that public entities, so all radio stations, all TV stations have to adhere to in Canada, thanks to that regulating body as it is. But in terms of independent content creators, there wasn't anything at all actually of what you had to speak of.
Okay.
The only thing is that they just, it's so crazy to me that ever made it through. But also it's not crazy to me because with the coalitions, you have a majority government. And then also with the way that it was presented to the public, like if you're somebody listening, why, and you heard, oh, they're introducing this new bill so that Canadian content creators can be more competitive and make more money. And it's going to help them so much because it's not fair that the US content creators are doing so good, blah, blah. Like, who would be against that? Everybody would be like, yeah, that's true. It should be more fair. But what people fail to recognize and look into is that the actual contents had nothing to do with that at all. The actual contents actually had to do with suppressing certain news outlets if they didn't follow through and pay the government for something that, why the hell would they pay the government for that? That's crazy to me. And also, if the government wants to save some money, I don't know, maybe you could cut back the 100,000 bureaucratic jobs you recently added. Just a thought. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if I answered your question. I think I just talked for 25
No,
minutes.
that's okay.
That's great. No, I think it's I like hearing your perspective on that, especially as like we were worried when they were passing all these laws just because we live in Canada. We were like, what's that mean for just our YouTube channel? Is there going to be laws or things that are passed against us?
I couldn't figure it out.
So-
I didn't know what was going on, so I just put it out of my mind.
Yeah, but there are lots of stories going on right now. I'd like to hear your take kind of on the 51st state comment by Donald Trump, because that's kind of opened up. I don't know if he just like threw that out there to see what would kind of like get us all talking, which I think it kind of has. Because there are some people who are like, yeah, great idea. And then those people are like, no, I'm a proud Canadian. I don't want to, I don't want to lose my country.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I'm curious first, what do you two think about that?
Well, like honestly, like I want what's best for everyone. There are things in the United States that I don't like. I think the gun laws are too lax there, but I think they're too tight here. I think we are taxed into oblivion here. I'm not sure, how that would translate over there. I like the idea that we have so-called free healthcare, which isn't really free. We clearly pay for it. So yeah, there's the healthcare that it's terrible, but it's free.
It's not free though. You just finished saying that.
Yeah. Like we pay for it with our tax dollars. So there's like a lot of things that I'd like to be seen done better. If the unanimous consensus was we join the United States, at this point right now, I don't know. I don't know what I'd have to wait till it actually happened for it.
Didn't they try to take over Canada and what was it, like 1816 or 1916?
Yeah, a long time
At some
ago.
point, yeah.
And
that
didn't we burn down the White House or something?
Sure did.
But we were also we were still part of Great Britain, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. My opinion about it is, I don't know, you ever, I'll quickly abbreviate, but there's like a old, parable of some guy that good news and bad news kept happening to him, and the townspeople would be like, your horse's leg is broken, and he would go, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, and they'd go, you're an idiot, of course it's bad, and then it would prevent him from some worse outcome, like he couldn't, and then they would be like, oh, you're blessed, and he would go, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I think in the long term, I don't know if it's good or bad if Canada becomes part of the States. I don't know. But rather than that, I said a while back, I could see something like this happening. I could see the States getting sort of desperate and start toying with that idea. I said this a while ago.
Yeah.
I said I could see Trump being like, almost like you've known a person like this in your life that's like, why don't we just work together? Why don't we just become one thing, And then next thing you know, it's like, look, we're trying to be nice here. You guys aren't being a thing. Either, you are not being fair. You're not trading with us fairly. And that's like a sign of I'm going to take that as aggression. We're going to take you over if you don't do it. Like it starts off nice requesting and then things get ugly, with brutish mentality. I could see maybe that's probably a cartoonish version of it. Probably be more sophisticated than that in real life. But I anticipated that something like that might actually be possible. Before it was even in the before it was even talked about that Trump talking about Canada is the first thing. If you recall, I was like, they're going to try to make Canada part of the States because we go down to the States. We vacation down there sometimes. And I was like, it's desperate down here in some places. It's like not good. And desperate people do stuff like, let's share some of that. I want some of what you got. We got a lot of oil or whatever it is. Why? I don't know what the resource is, but we
got a lot of oil and a lot of lithium, which is very needed these days. Yeah. Actually, where
very
I live,
desperate
Manitoba,
up there. They need some freedom.
Yeah.
We're gonna help them out.
Actually, you know what? I think lithium is a big one where I live, and this is fascinating too. But where I live is the largest reserve of lithium that could be used for mining across the entire globe. One downside, though, is before realizing how valuable it was, Stephen Harper had actually sold that off to China.
Oof.
Cool. But they haven't mined it in the province that I live in, at least that I'm aware of. or they haven't to extent, but we have that. And I think actually the biggest resource, oil is a big one for sure. Absolutely. However, having said that, Texas is also a massive oil contributor. So is New Orleans. If you go along the coast there, and same with California, their drilling rigs are nutty to look at if you're ever visiting those areas. But I think one of the biggest reasons why something like that could be legitimate is energy, and not energy in the form of fuel. I'm talking like data hubs and stuff, because the U.S. like they're tapped out. Like they have power outages in major cities. I've experienced that when I've traveled before, because their energy grid is completely at capacity. They do not have any more space at all. And Canada, we have a lot of space. And that's something even that I thought was really smart of Pierre Poilievre. He has not spoken formally to Donald Trump as he has said, but he has said, and you can absolutely guarantee that people on Trump's team are showing him these things and that he's looking into it, because this is a hot topic right now. But Poilievre has said that, Canada and the US should have a much better relationship, because look at all this land that we have, and we can absolutely have like data centers and all of that here. And that's the thing with AI, people don't realize, which also kind of makes me laugh in terms of the climate cult alarmists, is that, you have AI for everything and everybody's really supporting that, but you have no idea how much energy AI takes up and what is needed to maintain that energy. It is, I wish I could remember off the top of my head, because I had this conversation a few weeks ago, but the statistics are jarring. Like, like, you mean to tell me that Grok answering something or Chat GPT giving me a response takes up that much energy? What?
Wow.
So that's a really, really big point that I think was smart on Pierre Poilievre to bring that to light, because that's something that the Trudeau government has not spoken about at all. Not that I've heard, perhaps they have actually, and I'm just not familiar with it. But I think at the end of the day, will Canada become the 51st state? No, that would literally never happen. We are a sovereign nation. We are a Commonwealth country. Like, that would just quite literally never happen. It has been shocking to see the amount of Canadians who want that. And remind me of that if I lose track, because I want to get back to that point. But on top of that, though, I think actually Kevin O'Leary, former, what was he on, Dragon's Den?
Yeah, I saw that.
One of those.
I know what you're talking about.
I'm not the biggest fan of Kevin O'Leary, but I do resonate with some of the things that he says. I am still not over the boating incident with his wife and how his wife got off scot-free, even though she completely destroyed the lives and killed a woman while they were out drinking and boating. Haven't forgiven him for that one yet, but nonetheless, he brought up a really good point in that, do I think that Donald Trump actually means this? Absolutely not. I think he is for sure trolling. And that's one of the things that's so bizarre about Donald Trump too, because he certainly has a lot of intelligence in there. You can hear that when you listen to him speak about something he's passionate about. But in terms of his social media demeanor and stuff, it's so immature and childish and entertaining, and it's just like really bizarre to me how he speaks on there. But that's
what gets some people. That's what some people like,
because it's funny or whatever. Like, even I was on the phone with my mom last night, and we were actually talking about this, and she mentioned something about how she hates Donald Trump, and I was like, Mom, how can you hate Donald Trump? He is hilarious. So like, yeah, sure, some of the things that he says are crazy, but he's hilarious. You have to love him. He's so funny. So I don't like the way that he goes about it. I do think that it has likely gone a little too far. Having said that, I'm not surprised at all that it has. You have had, from the first comment he made, what was Justin Trudeau's response? Well, America should have hired a woman, as they're all sexist. Shut up, you idiot. Your party is like literally one of the only parties in the entire House that has never had a female leader. The Conservatives did. Sure, it may have been for a short period of time, but it happened. And also look at his track record with how he treats women. It's terrible. And you can even see that. Again, going back to that psychology and whatever, like if you've ever had interactions with somebody suffering from personality disorders, whether that be narcissism or what was the one that you had said before?
Borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, like there's things and ways that he behaves that seem, you can kind of pick that out. And I think after a long duration, it's pretty impossible to to try to actually say that it's not true. And that's just, some crazy rhetoric for people who don't like him.
I think people can can exhibit both. I think that there's people, I think these things are more prevalent than people are even maybe able to accept that there's like narcissism out there and borderline personality out there. Because one of the things that stands out to me about borderline personality is paranoia. And I see it squelch sometimes. I'm like, I'm aware of the paranoia that's going on around here. But anyway, I digress.
Trump... I have a friend who has borderline, and there's so many things like that where I'm like, interesting. And she's one of my best friends, but I finally had to get to a point with her because she will have things that trigger her sometimes. And I remember one time I called her because I could tell that something I did or said set off something in her brain. And I ended up just calling her on the phone, and I said some curse words in a funny, joking way. She was making cabbage rolls at the time. So I called her a Cabbage Patch Bee. And then I was like, listen, like, I can tell that you're upset right now, but like, listen, this was like a missed thing. I'm not mad at you. I know that you're not mad at me. Like, let's figure this out, because something went awry here, and we had to like kind of talk it out. And then I finally did have to just say to her, like, unfortunately, I know what some of those things are that kind of set you off. I'm going to do my best to respect that and not say those things or not have that demeanor or whatever. Cause she has a pretty unfortunate history in some regards too. So like, there's things that I'm certainly aware of, but I said, like, at the end of the day, I just need you to know that, like, I love you forever, and it's me. I'm not mad at anybody ever. Like, you could put me to hell and back and I'd probably still forgive you at the end of the day. So I'm like, if something goes off in your brain, like, just remember this moment of me kind of reminding you that whatever it is you think is going on that's against you or whatever, I'm assuring you from here on out, no matter what, that is absolutely never the case. So like, we just need to have that open communication. Things have been really great since then.
That's the perfect thing, I think, to say to a person with BPD. And for those with BPD, my suggestion is, I'll just throw it out there, is I think radical acceptance can go a long way with that particular thing. Is just because the world, you really can't control everything, and it's, it's weird, the overlap between autism and BPD and narcissism and all these different things. I see so much overlap, but on a personal level, I think that radical acceptance is like a good word, stew in that for a little while.
That type of stuff can harden you to it. And I think that radical acceptance, I like that. Having that in your mind can also help to kind of strengthen you to those things that once tore you down.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, even in terms of people who, we need to get back to Kevin O'Leary, but even in terms of people experiencing depression and stuff, I think, I don't know, this is just a me thing. And I'm sure there's psychologists and experts out there who will say this is probably not the right approach, but I don't like when people say, like, oh, it'll be better, everything's going to be okay. And it's like, no, it's actually not okay. It's probably not going to get better. And that's not always a bad thing. It might be bad right now, but also just realizing that whatever it is that you went through that's making you feel this kind of way, that it probably isn't going to be better, and you're not going to wake up feeling okay in 6 months. You're still going to feel this way, and this is just your new course of life that was put on your path, and you have to deal with this and get through it. I find, for myself at least, kind of having that attitude of like, this forever changed me, and that's okay. And what can I take away from this, and how can I live my life with this, instead of hoping for something that's probably not true to come true. It just, like, I don't like that. Like, it's like, there was a girl on Facebook who, this is a tragic story, but I'd say more of an acquaintance of mine. She had been trying to have a baby for a very long time, and she finally did, after like 6 years and finally doing in vitro. And her baby passed away 13 days after it was born, and it was just hell. And I remember so many people in the comments saying, like, oh, everything's going to be okay, you'll get through this. And I'm like, no, it's not okay. And you are not going to get through this. This is hell. This is going to be hell, and it's going to hurt you for the rest of your life. And it's awful, and you're not going to get over this ever. This is always going to be a part of you now. And that is horrific, and it's hell on earth. But like, this is your life now. So what are you going to do? You know, and be sad, cry, be miserable, be mad, be all of those things. But for somebody to say, oh, it's going to be okay. No, it's not. She just lost her baby. That's not okay. That'll never, ever be okay. And I don't like that wording sometimes because it's just not genuine, right? It's the thing that people say. But when you think about it deeper, it's like, well, that doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. And there's a lot of people suffering from really awful things that, you know, you get told things like that. And then eventually it's like, yeah, no, I'm actually still pretty messed up. Everybody told me it was going to be okay. It's not. But, you know, I think that accepting that early on can sometimes, of course, this varies from person to person, but can sometimes help lead you into a path of actually acting and living in a way that this really awful thing that happened, while it's heavy on you, or, you know, the paranoia, whatever, while it's heavy on you, it's not necessarily something that's going to hinder you as a human being if you can accept it and learn to work with it and recognize that it's a part of you now.
What you said was fundamentally correct, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot of audiences, like there's some people that's going to be a hard pill to swallow, but doesn't take away from the fact that it's correct. And, you know, not everybody can afford certain people's worth, you know, but the thing about it is, like, you know, you could illustrate it with, like, if I take an axe to the head and I got a scar here forever, and people are like, there's no scar there. This is not there. You know, it gets ridiculous. Some things are there and they're there forever, but it's amazing how resilient people are. It's amazing the nature of homeostasis. It's amazing. Like, sometimes you'll hear a song and the first 2 times you heard it, you're like, I don't like that. And then the third time you're like, I like it. I actually, something I didn't like turns into something I liked, or turns into a miracle in some other way or whatever. Like, it's not, you don't have to be disheartened, but facing the pain, like you said very eloquently, is.
Do you want to return to the Kevin O'Leary thing?
Yes,
you got to get back to Mr. Sunshine.
Okay,
we
go
have
back
to.
Go back to that. That's fine.
Okay, we'll just rewind. Sorry. But so Kevin O'Leary, the thing that he had said about the Trump border that I thought was an interesting perspective, and one that I actually agree with, is that realistically, Donald Trump, I highly doubt, thinks in any capacity that he can actually go and take Canada over. That's silly. There's been some polls, and let me just say too, and I use polls on my own channel sometimes, by the way, so I know that I'm a liar and I'm a hypocrite here, but I don't care. I'm going to say this anyway. But like, there's been some polls saying how, I think it was like 60% of Canadians, or 60%, said that they would be open to the idea of joining America. Wow. Did you guys get polled? Just asking. Did you? No? Polling is BS. I'll use it to prove my point, because it does show where some people are at, but like, literally, polling sample sizes are ridiculous. I have never once answered a poll. Where the
hell are they coming from?
You mean to tell me that this poll, who was filled out by who? Somebody who found a link on Facebook and actually wanted to click it? What? Like, somebody.
Polls are hilarious, and I'm like you. I use them. Sometimes I'll be like, you know, the global IQ average is 100, and if you know your own IQ. I just said that.
I literally said, oh, IQ rates are lowering. They are statistically, but.
I know, and I use stuff like that, but it's correct. It's like, where the hell are these coming from? I didn't vote. You know.
There was somebody on TikTok recently who was arguing with me, because I did a video actually very similar to a lot of what our chat is today, just about like really thinking critically and learning from the people around you versus attacking them. And there was a man who said, oh, well, actually, did you know that conservatives have a lower IQ than liberals? The conservative IQ is 84, which, by the way, 84, that's like close to what Stephen Avery from Making a Murderer had. And if you watch that, you know that 84 is not good and probably does not represent most conservatives. But they were like, oh yeah, the conservative is 84 and the liberals are actually higher up at like 110. And the first thought in my head was like, so you're telling me that a sample size that was actually relevant to the population went online, filled out a form where they did an IQ test, and then also said what their political like association was? Really? That sounds insane. And
I'm cringing because I'm so embarrassed. I've been duped by that stuff, man. I've like heard people say stuff like that in the past and been like, oh, you know. But it's true.
100% the same. But when you really think about it, it's like, that's stupid. But listen, I like I said, I'm a total hypocrite, because when it benefits me, while I have that in my head, I will use it. I just may not
Yeah.
always share that this,
Yeah.
well, the sample
Yeah.
size is probably not that great.
This friggin' algorithm spitting this out in my benefit today,
but so Kevin O'Leary had said that in terms of Canada, a lot of people, sure, there was a lot that were polled who said that they would be fine with it. How genuine those numbers are, I think, is pretty low. But also, he said what would actually make the most sense and could be a superpower, and I'm in agreement of this, is the fact that Canada is a wealth of resources that we don't use. Like,
Right.
how on earth do we have oil from Alberta that is actually some of the cleanest oil in the entire globe, but we spend like $4 billion a year buying oil from Saudi Arabia, who is involved in all sorts of ethics violations and human rights crimes and just all of these things that Canada is so unbelievably against. Why do we send them money to buy their oil when we have oil right here? I mean, I understand why, because obviously we want to sell our oil at a high price to profit off of it. But, and then we have all of our mines and all of this stuff too, even more space for people to live should they see fit. And so to me, it actually does make a lot of sense. Like, yeah, why wouldn't we do something where Canada and the US, it's not that Canada is going to become the US, but the fact that we don't use each other more than we should. Like, why is it so expensive to fly to the US from Canada? Like, why?
Right.
Yeah, it actually probably would make sense at some point in time to I don't know how I feel about having the same currency or anything like that, to be honest with you. I'm not going to get into that because we could talk for hours, but there's like a lot of really dark history in terms of the US dollar and other countries rejecting their currency and then just really bad things happening.
That's crazy pyramid money with eyeballs on it.
Yeah. That's a rabbit hole to go down. A lot of nations, and actually a lot of nations of which we now call terrorists, or people who actually were on the same side as the US until the US wanted them to use their currency and they said no. And then all of a sudden there was like just some really atrocious things that started happening to those communities. Worth a deep dive if you feel like it. But yeah, so I'm not sure how I feel about accepting the US currency. However, I do think that it would make a lot of sense for us to join forces in a way that we haven't been. I think that there's a lot of things that Trump has recommended that do make a lot of sense. Absolutely.
It just has to be the smart version of it. It just has to not be the stupid version. Like, if you imagine the Earth 200 years from now and it's like, let's check in, what's Earth up to? Oh, they're still all segregated and warring, and you know what I mean? Like, oh, they unified somehow. They unified and became like a powerful like collective. What is just ostensibly smarter?
When you think about even the Canadian military and the US does have a very valid concern of our northern borders in terms of Russia and China. Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And this is us, like this is our continent. So yeah, it does make sense to have a joint force on some of those things. And I think that at the very least, it would be worth looking into and seeing, kind of thinking it out and seeing what could possibly happen. And, also just in terms of people, the US, everybody included, the Roman Empire never thought that it was going to see its end. Same with other empires. The Ottoman Empire never thought that they were really going to see their end the way that they did, that they were going to lose all that land and all these things. And Canada and the US, sure, maybe 2024, but or 2025 coming up here, but like, to think that Canada and the US are going to be around in another 500 years as exactly they are now, I think is really silly. And the greatest example of what's to come in the future is to reflect on what's happened in the past. And in the past, we have seen that, yes, absolutely. Look at even Taiwan and what has happened over there. Like, look at North and South Korea. Like, that was not even that long ago that those wars took place. So I do think that it's silly to think that we will be exactly where we are now in many years to come. And to completely reject the idea of that, I also think is silly, because it's like, well, sure, maybe it could be worth looking into. Why do we trade at such a high value? Could it actually be more cost effective for us if perhaps we traded for free and then shared profits. Like, would that actually end up being more cost effective? Like, who knows, right? So I think it's worth looking into as well. And then the final point that I wanted to make on that, sorry again for talking for 10 years, but the final point I wanted to make was, the amount of Canadians. So again, we'll go using that poll that is probably not that valid, saying that like 60% of Canadians want to join the US. I think the bigger question here is why. And the reason why isn't because they hate their country and they want to move, though I'm not going to lie, Florida sounds very warm right now. The reason why is because of failed leadership. And if you go throughout history, what's one thing that terrorist organizations, revolutions, or even just like militia groups, what's one thing they all have in common? It's not that they hated their country. To the opposite, it's that they loved their country and they were being ruled by somebody who was not meeting basic needs. And that's exactly the same case here. So I think the bigger question should be, whoa, if 60% of Canadians allegedly are saying that they want to move, if this is such a big conversation where people are actually so fed up with the way that things are run here and the amount of spending and waste, we're sick and tired of having Justin Trudeau tell us about saving the climate while he's more than okay emitting more than any Canadian, flying his private jet so that he can go skiing in the mountains and get told to F off in the parking lot. Like, like we're told, oh, make sure you don't drink and drive. But then you also have Melanie Joly spending over $50,000 a month on alcohol. Melanie Joly's job is not her literally meeting with all of these people all the time. Like, she probably has 15 meetings a month, give or take. Why the hell are you spending $50,000 a month on alcohol? Girl, what are you buying? Like, that's like, most people are happy to get a bottle of Copper Moon, like, what, chill out. So I think that it does just really go back to Canadians are so unbelievably fed up. Many Canadians felt this way in the Harper era as well. 9 years, give or take, 8 to 9 years, I guess. It seems to be kind of the cutoff point in Canadian history as well. It's pretty rare that people last.
That feels like the glory days now compared to where we are now.
Too long. Yeah. I don't think if Trudeau only had one run, I think we could have saved a lot of face. Like, there would have been people that have problems with it. But I think this is like, come on, why did it have to be so long? It wouldn't have been that bad. And now it's ugly. Now it's gotten bad.
The coalition parties too are something that, while not new, coalitions have existed with minority governments throughout our history. I do. This is something I'm just going to kind of speak more as I'm thinking it, because I certainly don't have the data and I haven't researched it enough. But just my own perspective at this point in time with what I do know is the way that the coalition parties have been used has been like so ugly and so gross. And even NDP, Jagmeet Singh saying like, I've torn up the agreement. He said in one interview, I tore up the agreement literally 13 times. And it was like a 6-minute interview.
Is that the one where he told? Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Clearly he didn't. And so I think that a lot of Canadians have been exposed as well to really things happening that people didn't vote to have happen. And they can't get out of it. And the only people that can help them get out of it have something financially to gain, or even something for their own ego to gain. And I think that a lot of people are waking up to that. But I think the way that the coalitions have been done, I'm almost at a point, especially after this experience, where, again, I know that this has happened in the past, and maybe there's been similar reactions as well. I'd have to look into them more. But the fact that so many Canadians are saying we really, really, really want an election. And those are polls you can trust, because those ones actually have good turnout. But the fact that there's so many of them, and the fact that we are in a democracy and we can't get rid of this guy, and Justin Trudeau changed the laws when he was first hired so that he can't be removed unless he fails an election or loses an election. Like, there's so many things about this particular situation that we're in that, because it's gone on for so long, as we were saying earlier, you can fool people for a long time, but you always pay the piper, always. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're really seeing the end result of that now, and just how dark and corrupt those coalition parties are, because they have something to gain. It's not about Canadians. If it was about Canadians, we would not be facing the crisis that we're in right now. And it would have been gone many, many years ago. So this is not about Canadians. because everything shows, and this also is not about Canadians, and they admit that when they lie and how they're measuring our debt to GDP ratio, you know? So this is clearly not about us. They know that things are really bad. Chrystia Freeland even said that in her resignation letter. They know. And they're in this for something of themselves, which to me, I'm like, if you wanted to be like really popular and have a lot of money, maybe you should have been a celebrity. I don't know. Like maybe you shouldn't have gotten into politics.
I can't help but feel like someone has something on Trudeau that keeps him where he is, because why would you put yourself through that? Like, it's all, there's like literally flags waving around.
I think it's the nature of
flags against your name all over the country, and you still choose to stay in that place when, to me, it seems so obvious.
Don't you think it's the nature of the beast? Don't you think it's the sort of the nature of karma, or even, you know, dare I say it, like, because sometimes you're going, just don't go too far. Why are we always got to go so far with everything? Like, I don't know if we have time, but I even wanted to ask you about some of the more intricate things about, because I've heard in looking at some of your videos, like the discussion of wokeness, and people are sick of this, you know, Trump's like all out being like, woke's over. That's no more woke, you know, and, but
woke's over.
Yeah. But I'm like, well, the reality of wokeness is, like, you might know somebody that's, you know, part of the LGBTQ, or somebody that's even, you know, trans, or somebody that's like, look, man, I've actually faced racism. I've been walking around and somebody called me a derogatory comment. Like, there's a reality to it too.
That's human rights though, right? I think the woke movement, and people say this all the time, oh, well, woke actually just means that you're aware. And it's like, yeah, well, clearly we've learned over the last few years that words change their meaning all the time. And that word has certainly changed its meaning.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, you know, I have zero qualms at all. I don't really care what anybody does with their life. The reason why I tend to lean more conservatively on issues is because I actually just really want the government to get out of my life. Like, leave me alone, please. But take care of things. Leave me alone, please. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at with it. And the Liberal government is very involved because they're, well, you know, they're liberals. So
we've paid so hard for putting Trudeau in that one time. Like, I feel like a lot of people even liked Harper, but everyone was like, let's just see what happens. And then it's like, shit.
It run its course, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think, like, I think the world as a whole, we're talking 2015-ish, you know, there were so many things society-wise that had really changed around that. And think of how many movements you started to have, like third wave feminism really kicking off around that period of time. And Justin Trudeau, I am a feminist. No, you're a loser and a liar. But anyway, so, you know, there were so many things there where the culture was shifting, and it was definitely moving to a point where people were so unbelievably privileged that they could actually focus on all of these things. And people were so unbelievably privileged and suffering due to probably one of the elements, at least I think, would be the rise of social media. People were suffering from all sorts of insecurities and all these things, and comparing yourself to other people. What do people do when they feel insecure? They try to not feel insecure. What's a really good way to do that? It's to try to make your life feel as though it has meaning and purpose. And by joining into a movement that, you know, has malicious intent of making somebody incredibly rich, BLM is a prime example there. You know, sure, they had this big movement. What have they done for the Black community? Oh, right, nothing. In fact, Donald Trump has done more for the Black community than they have. He did more for the Black community than Biden did. And then you had these people who were just making a lot of money off of things, and people, it's very easy to get swept up into that ideology because it feels good and it feels moral. There's often an uglier side to it, though, if you actually do your research. And I think that Trudeau came in around that exact same time.
There was always this issue with objectivity, because I was actually like late in life in college during that time, and it was a pretty hyper liberal thing. And I was like, same as you, I was like, I don't care what somebody is. Like, I'm even happy. Like, I'm pro LGBTQ. But the moment you bring in any kind of objective opinion about things, like, well, wait a sec, what's like the most precise way of talking about this? It always seemed like it was met with like, just get on the bandwagon. Like, what are you? Like, that's not appealing, man. You know, what's one thing poetry and truth have in common? Everybody most people friggin' hate poetry, you know, like that type of sentiment. Like, just say something that sounds like what the group's saying. And that's dangerous to me. But I found that during that time, it was like an ocean at that time of liberalism. And maybe, like you say, we're facing like an ocean of conservatism. But I would implore people to be objective, man. Like, nothing is beyond critique, like, to some degree.
I think too, this is the school of thought. Help me out here while I work through this. Bear with me. But I think, you know, with a lot of that, again, taking it back to kind of a more mental health aspect. And this is something that I'll use North Korea again as an example. Dissenting voices were essentially canceled. They were much worse than canceled. And we started to see a rise of something similar there, which I think is very scary, because often you should probably learn from your history, not repeat it, and also not have governments who are totally okay with repeating it. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah.
And also repeating it under the guise of, this is what's best for you. Yeah, if anybody is telling me that I have to change because it's what's best for me, and it has to involve censoring my speech or being scared, probably not best for me.
Or compelling you in some way, like compelling you to do something?
Yeah, probably not best for me. If you have to explain something to me and tell me that it's best for me, it's not best for me. Like, human beings are very complex. We are very smart creatures. We have been alive for a long time. So if you have to explain why something makes sense, it's probably because it doesn't make sense. But so I think that, you know, around that same time frame, you had a lot of people, and it's so crazy to me. Like, I'm 28 years old, and I hear this so frequently from young women who, just a few weeks ago, actually, I was at a friend's birthday, and I met a new girl there who I deeply enjoy now. And she came up to me and she said, like, what do you do? And I was like, I don't know how to describe this. Well, I used to have a real job, and now I have another job that I guess is real, but it's not. I do like political commentary, I guess. And she was like, oh, interesting. Like, for what? And she kind of gave me this look where I felt hesitant. Like, I felt like immediately, and she's younger than I am too. She's a few years younger than me. And I was like, oh crap. Like, what did I get myself into here? And I told her, I'm like, it's like largely conservative, I would say. A lot of the stuff that I talk about, though, not only am I discussing politics, sometimes I get a little raged up, but like usually I have a much deeper discussion about some of these things, the way that I see them. And she said to me, like, thank you so much. And I was like, oh, that really caught me off guard. Why are you thanking me? And she said, like, I actually feel the exact same way about these things. But I nobody that I know does. And I'm like always too scared to say anything. And the thing about that made me laugh is the fact that, you know, she says nobody I know does. And I'm like, you'd be surprised. I'm quite sure a lot of them do, but a lot of them feel exactly as you do, where they feel scared to say anything.
Well, you might have to talk to them alone as opposed to in a group, because that seems to affect things, for God's sake. We're just coming out of the holidays, and you get a refresher in, oh yeah, there's some things are sidebar conversations and some things are group conversations.
So that's been, it's been really eye-opening to kind of see dissenting voices have been totally ostracized, and dissenting voices are not always correct either. That's not the point. The point is that even if you like or don't like something, we should actually pay attention to the things that everybody is saying and doing, because we can learn a lot from them, even if we disagree. So the fact that things have gone, actually, I'll use this as an example to kind of wrap this up, but Tucker Carlson, he was just at a Turning Point USA event, and he gave a really powerful speech. And in it, he said that, you know, like the wave of this like dark cloud of you can't say this, you can't do this, whatever, like that is gone. It's over. It is absolutely over in the United States. And then he said, like, we're still going to have political debate. We're still going to talk about things. I'm still going to say or do things that you may not like. And same, you know, for you to me. But the difference is now, no longer will it be the day of, well, you can't say that because what you just said is so horribly bad that we can't even talk about it. He was like, gone are those days. Like, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, if people on the left, if the Democrats say that they want a 6'3" man who's identifying as Leah Thomas now to compete and win the gold medal in a swim team, that's fine. but they're going to have to explain to us why that's a good idea. If they say that, you know, we shouldn't be saying certain things about some group, that's okay. But they need to tell us why that makes sense now, because we have been in this era where people are doing things and shaming you for disagreeing with it, but they have such a majority or a perceived majority that nobody wants to push back because nobody wants to get canceled or doxxed or swatted, and people don't want to lose their jobs, that people don't push back.
And I think a lot of those decisions were done behind closed doors in the past. And
Yeah.
I think that's what social media does a good thing, is that it feels like it gets revealed immediately. Oh, I got a new policy. Everyone now in America knows about it.
Yeah. And
Like,
people are
or-
talking about it.
Yeah, like it. So that, I think, is changing how that happened, because sometimes things would just, it would be one day it would just end up on your doorstep and be like, this is how things are now. And be like, I didn't get the memo. What are you talking about? It got done behind closed doors. But now I think transparency is becoming, in my opinion, more relevant or clear. It's happening.
At the
more now.
crescendo of that stuff, at the crescendo of the cancel thing, I guess you could call it, the cancel culture, it was so ridiculous because on one hand, you're right. You could say something and people would be like, oh my God, ooh, you're canceled right away. And then insane things would be said. And I'll just sort of cryptically say it. Like, to me, from the get-go, I was like, if you say someone's race as an insult, like you're a this and that's an insult, or their gender as an insult, that's sexism and racism. I don't care how you slice it.
Yeah.
Like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
But that was like, so there would be whole movies, whole shows that like the theme of the show would be like, you're a this gender and you're a this race. And so you're an idiot or you're wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like, so there's like acceptable
he's just a cis
racism.
white man.
Right. There's acceptable racism in one hand, but you're like, so... And I think that the temptation is to like go over the old footage and see all the movie stars that said crazy shit during that time and be like, you need to be held accountable. But I think that maybe there's an opportunity to be mature here and kind of forgive ourselves as a race and be like, look, let's just go forward here and try to operate in good faith. You know, like the human race is what I mean.
I like the idea of
as
that being on like a social media platform, a little bit of leeway, a little bit of forgiveness. Like I've seen some people say some like wild stuff online. And then
Howard Stern during the COVID thing was like, let them die. And all this shit,
and then I'm shocked. I'm shocked when it's like a week later and they're back on there again. I'm like, wow.
Right.
I was like, I thought you'd be done.
Because we want justice and everything like that. But honestly, like, I don't know. What good is it going to do if we sit there and like go like everyone got a platform now and it's all permanent, you know?
Yeah, no, it's annoying. And, you know, I think too, people, whether you like it or not, we all have egos, and people do not like being told no. People don't like being told that they're wrong.
Oh yeah.
And I think that to respond to those situations by doing just that, people it is wild how much people will vehemently defend something that is actually wrong. Like they will bend over backwards.
It's so embarrassing.
Like, it's insane. But that's again because that pride and that ego, it refuses to admit defeat. And that is to me, I think, one of the biggest, scariest threats to society that we have. I really do believe that the people's unwillingness to just say, oh yeah, that was messed up. I was wrong. Yeah. You're right. Or even
how hard is that?
Was
God damn it.
Point. Like,
let's all hug. I don't care. It's over.
Yeah.
Let's move forward. But you're right. People start
it's the victim oppressor narrative. It is. That's really what it goes back to, which goes back to this woke culture. And we need to actually stop that. Like if you want people, and this is why, you know, that they don't want this to end. And why would they want this to end when people are getting so rich? Rich off of these things. You would never want it to end realistically. And I know that sounds dark and you'd like to believe that all of these things had the best of intent. And I believe that they probably did in the very beginning, but it does not take long for people to get corrupted. When you start having that kind of money and power and you can say things and people respect you and things happen as a result of what you say, like things that you want to happen. I think it's pretty hard to avoid that being a very real reality. But like, if you actually wanted to end racism, that's probably always going to exist. There's crappy people everywhere. But like, if you actually wanted to end it, one of the easiest ways you could do that would be to stop teaching people and especially our youth that somebody's different from you or less privileged than you because of their race or their culture. That's crazy. When I was growing up, I had friends from all over the place, and I never thought twice about it at all. It literally meant absolutely nothing to me. But then you have children these days who are like 7, 8 years old
Hyper aware.
that noticed it. Yeah. And it's like, that kind of seems like we went backwards, actually.
Well, the crazy
guys,
thing
like,
was during that, the height of that, the crescendo of cancel wokeness and everything. Sometimes you would see people that were of diverse races, like being like, "Let's be sensible here." Like, you know, like sometimes it was the voice of the people that you wouldn't assume that were saying like, "Let's cool it down a little bit." You know, we're all humans here. Let's not lose track of free speech and all these different things. We might be a little different, but if we get hypersensitive and in crazy ways, you know, but it's not my wheelhouse. I guess I can't speak too much on it because I'm not afflicted in that way. But
I was gonna say, because you're not Asian, like we're
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, like I live in kind of a small town, so it's you know, it's not.
I took
really
an
an
ancestry DNA test once, and I'm like 1.5% black. So
Hey-oh.
Good. Gotta mean something, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm curious about kind of like the conservative liberal spectrum, because like me, I see myself kind of like as a centrist. I lean, you know, probably, you know, more conservative when it comes to fiscal aspects, and I probably lean maybe a little bit more left when it comes to some social ideologies and stuff like that. But I think for the vast majority of us, we're probably somewhere around that middle. Yep. And then you've got some people out on the fringes that are trying to reef people over onto their side. Going into the future, how can we better understand that spectrum so that we can maybe like bridge some gaps and bring some peace? A little bit more like everybody at the same table. Like, can we sit down and have like an adult conversation?
That's like, one of the things that, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, you watch Canadian Parliament, man, and it's not like, it is funny, it is entertainment, but at the same time, we're like, these are the adults. These are the leaders.
Yeah.
You're the best we got? Come on.
Yeah. That's partly why I don't watch it. I'm like, I might as well watch WrestleMania. I don't even know if I believe this. You know, I don't even know if I believe some of the radical.
Well, you shouldn't, because there's a lot of people who lie about things in the House. They literally say things because they know that it's going to be uploaded and that CTV will cover it or something. Like, they say things 100% for talking points. I've noticed that absolutely. Yeah. I would say that's like really as a whole, people also like, and I don't know why this is considered some fringe conspiracy, but people absolutely need to realize that there are powers that be who want your vote, and they will do things to get your vote. They will do things for the course of years, slowly, so slowly you don't even realize it's happening, to divide you and make you feel resentful about something that may not even actually exist. The abortion one is one that I talk about so frequently. Did you know that Pierre Poilievre has voted against abortion 19 times? No, he hasn't. It's been 3. Not a single one of those bills was actually about abortion, by the way. One of them was about having harsher penalties after a woman was murdered and her unborn child was also killed in the event. That's what he voted in favor of. Would you not have voted in favor of that too? I don't know. I think the most controversial one that he's voted in favor of would probably be, there was a study, I think this one came out in around 2012 is when he voted on it. And the study was to have actual research projects to definitively tell when human life begins. That was the process, or that was the pitch. That bill was denied. He did vote in favor of it, and I could see why some people who want everything to be pro-choice could see that as, oh, well, you're trying to definitively say this is when a life begins. And so I could understand why they wouldn't want that. But also, even with that topic, my brain is like, wait a second. So like, you're so pro-abortion that you would actually rather not definitively know that answer? I'm like, regardless of what you think, it seems like a pretty worthwhile subject to explore of when human life actually begins. That seems like it makes sense.
Fodder for further reason. I mean, I wasn't laughing earlier at abortion. I was laughing at the fact that we almost in this day and age need to be like information robots. Like, well, I've actually done more research than you. And we're like, you know, it's I don't know. I don't want to get into abortion.
Yeah,
but
continue. Continue on. You were
Yeah.
making some good points there.
So yeah, I think that people definitely really need to recognize the powers that be that, again, are very rarely moving in your favor. This goes across the board. This isn't party specific whatsoever. But I think that when people have that better understanding and that self-awareness as well of knowing that people aren't going to save you, like this is your life to live, and you need to work really hard and do your due diligence and put in the time to comprehend and understand and to hear things that you dislike. Like self-awareness, if there was anything at all that I could grant everybody, it would be that, because I think that that's really where we're lacking the most, and lacking in that regard too. It blinds you to people who say things that you don't particularly like, or say things that might be triggering or whatever. And yeah, those things, it sucks to hear sometimes, but and sometimes it sucks to hear, and on top of it sucking to hear, they may actually be wrong, but it's important to hear them nonetheless, so that you have an idea and you can go and research all of that. And I think that in terms of kind of bridging that gap, people really need to get back to that point and also realize, people who are on the left and people who are on the right, if we want to use that as a starting ground for this, they actually usually want pretty much the exact same thing for everybody. They do. They have a different approach to it, certainly. They may have some different points and reasons why they want that thing. But like conservatives, I mean, there's radicals. We'll exclude the radicals and pray for them. But conservatives, what do they want? They want you to make more money and to be happy and to just live your life. And what do liberals want? They'd be stupid if they didn't want those exact same things. Like every human being wants to do that. Every single human being wants to live a good life, wants to be happy, wants to make enough money to be happy, right? And like that's just true. And so people who are so at each other's throats and they like demonize each other over these things. And it's like, if you were to ever actually just meet that person and never discuss politics, there's a very high probability you'd be friends, because you do want the same things. You just have a different way of going about it. And I think that people need to recognize that a lot. And in terms too of even just like the division and divisiveness, statistically. So let's just use, sorry to do this, but we're going to use abortion again. I'm only saying this because I'm more familiar with it. But so, you have pro-life, pro-choice. And within those numbers, so people will say like, oh, well, 70% of America is pro-choice. And the other percent, like, they're just these awful people that don't want you to have the ability, blah, 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 reproductive rights, as though the most important thing about a woman is the fact that she could eliminate being pregnant if she wanted to. There's far more things about us that are very valuable and worthy of protecting. Not to say that doesn't matter. But so 60%, whatever it is, 70%, I forget what number I said. What did I say? 60?
70.
70? Yeah. Oh my God. I was just reading about this morning. So whatever the first number was the right one. But it was like 70% of Americans are pro-choice. Well, people will use that to their defense. But little do you know that when you dig a little bit deeper, out of that 70% that are pro-choice, about 55% of them are pro-choice until a certain gestation period. Yeah. And actually about 100% of, I shouldn't say 100, there are a few. So let's say 99.7% of those people who are pro-choice are actually not pro-choice if it's in the final trimester, Yeah. So, but they use these statistics to make you think, holy moly, wow, if I don't feel like this, look at how big of an outsider I am, because everybody else thinks this is normal, clearly. Yeah. But it's like, well, no, when you actually dig into the research, at first glance, it appears that way. But again, you see that we actually have a lot more in common than a lot of us think that we do. And the division isn't as great as we are told that it is. And there's a lot more similarities there. And I think it's just bizarre, to summarize the power that the government and people in authority positions, celebrities, TV show hosts, whatever, the power that they have had to really change our minds and convince us of things that we didn't believe at first, and convince us that it's moral and virtuous to believe in these things that that we didn't even believe in 10 years ago. Like there's so many examples of that, of just the power that they have in doing a really good job of spreading a message and spreading that division. And they want that division because division gets them votes. And people need to understand that.
You can take something like that that's kind of like a moral whatever gray area and use it like a tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a few things that drive me absolutely loopy when it comes to government, and it's not just unique to Canada, but I'd like to hear what you have to think about it. Like, because up to an election, it's always the same thing. They try to bribe you with your own money. Yep. Essentially, we're going to give you this, as if it's like coming from them, when we all know where tax dollars come from. But I feel like it's all a distraction for like a lot of the big things that are broken about our system when it comes to like overtaxation, offshore tax havens, stock markets and politicians being able to influence them, corporate lobbying, political donations, and gerrymandering. I feel like these are things all over the world that they all do. Yep. And so sometimes I get the feeling that like after they get done in, like the parliament buildings, they go off and they all have steak dinners together and laugh about, the great, and joke that really they're all sitting at the same table, because those are the things they're really protecting while they try to bribe us, keep us divided. So what do you think about kind of like all that?
I think that you're absolutely correct. Does anybody else think it's weird how, I'll use the United States as an example here. There's governors in the United States, people who are involved in Senate and whatever, who the government job pays, $120,000 a year, let's say. Yeah. But somehow since getting that job, their net worth went up by over, 6 million. How does that make sense? There's actually, and they don't actually own anything on paper oftentimes. How does that work? I think that that's very, very accurate. In Canadian politics, we see the same thing all the time with people where it's like, oh, okay, so your position is a salary of like 250, 350, whatever. That's weird that you started all of these things and bought all these rental properties and like, weird, there's absolutely corruption for sure. As I said earlier too, it's like, I can't believe, that would break me if I did, that people go into it with so much evil intent at the very beginning. I'm sure some do, but as a whole, it's just impossible for me to believe that. I really do believe that a lot of people have good intentions at first, and then something happens and it takes over and you realize you can get away with it. And that devil on your shoulder is so loud sometimes. So, I really do think that, yeah, absolutely. It's look over here, not over here. And it's funny too, you mentioned even with the GST tax rebate or whatever, like, we're doing this thing. And it's like, okay, great. And you have people like vehemently defending it and arguing about it online. I know this because they're in my comment section frequently, about how good it is. Oh, this is good. We should just be grateful for any help we should get. And I'm like, you do remember that the government works for us, right? And we should be grateful for any help that we get. We pay for them. We pay their bills. This is our money. I'm not grateful for any help that I get because the fact that I need this help is ludicrous to me. Yeah. Like, you mean to tell me that I'm paying more money to the government than I make in a year when you factor in the taxes on everything that we have in society that are immediately deducted off of your paychecks, that immediately increase the cost of everything that you buy. Like, you mean to tell me that I'm paying my measly job where I make $54,000 a year is paying for the government to make $10 million a year. And then they're giving me back $5 on my grocery list? What? No, I'm not grateful for that, actually. I think it's disgusting. I think it's absolutely disgusting that we're in a position where you even have the audacity to tell me that I should be grateful for cutting 12, 13%, whatever the hell it is in each province. Yeah.
Not even on everything. I took my car in to get service yesterday on the biggest purchase in the whole holidays. It was like $2,000 and the GST didn't come off that. I was like, the one thing I could have actually used it on.
Yeah. And of course that's helpful for some people. And so again, I'm like, yeah, of course, if it's helpful for you and you're in a position where you need that, great. I'm happy that it's helpful for you. But the bigger picture here is that you shouldn't need that. You actually really shouldn't need that. Sure, there's always been poverty, but previously people could actually work hard and pull themselves out of poverty. Nowadays, people are working hard and getting pushed into poverty. Not to mention with the GST rebate, the fact that they agreed, and this is just frustrating to me because they say, oh, well, Aaron O'Toole from the conservative side, he wanted to cut GST over the holidays too. And you guys were for it then and you're against it now. Yeah, because the plan was completely different. He was just going to scrap it altogether. The federal government under Trudeau is subsidizing provinces for the lost HST that they are losing now, for the provinces that have it, or PST, HST, whatever the hell it is. They're subsidizing provinces for that. What did they need to subsidize that? Well, they had to take out a loan for about $2.7 billion to be able to pay back those provinces to then reissue to all of the distributors. And here's what you saw too, is that people, because they knew that GST was getting cut, what did they do? They didn't change their prices at all. So not only did they make the same amount, but they're also then going to get that GST rebate from the federal subsidy. So now they're actually making double what they would have on the taxes on that product instead. I've seen that all over the place. So it's just gross. Everything about it is so gross. And the subsidization is horrendous too, because you take out a loan of $2.7 billion, let's say even at a 15-year loan repayal, that is now totaling, when it comes to interest, borrowing rates and everything, that's totaling somewhere close to $10 billion now. So was it really worth it for our grandchildren's grandchildren to be paying off the 5 cents you got removed from your bag of Lay's chips? Was it really? Argue that one. That sounds stupid. Like,
you guys seem to know the more technical aspects of this, and I'm curious as to like questions like, well, is democracy real? Is democracy real at all? Is there an argument to be made to say that our politics some kind of reflect, like, do people want Donald Trump to be president? Is there actually people that want Justin Trudeau to be prime minister? Like, are those real things? Mm-hmm. What's going on with democracy? But that being said, of course, there's like room for shady stuff to happen at that level. But sometimes I shake my head because people will be, after an election, people will be in uproar, like the people that didn't get what they want. And I go, well, like, aren't we voting these people in? For instance, like if there was somebody that cruised through a neighborhood and they were driving a Lamborghini and they were lined by homeless people all over the place, like where are we at in terms of admiring people that have more than us? Like, I've always been like, why are you chasing the superstar? You're not him. People are like, you don't get it, man. Like, you need to like learn how to like appreciate somebody that's got more than you. I don't understand why certain displays of lavishness aren't like embarrassing. I don't understand it. I think it's probably because some of it is cloistered off, you know, like maybe rich people just get around other rich people so they don't have to face the vitriol of like the people that don't have it. But to me, it's like, I think it's the beginning of it. Topics like this, like, you know, it's going to likely reach a fever pitch if people are like, this is disgusting. It's disgusting to see somebody that's supposed to be a civil servant living high on the hog. You know, maybe that will cause an effect later on. But some part of me tells me that it's reflecting our nature to some degree, because do we as individuals still want to be the one that has the lion's share of stuff? Like, is that a reality within us? And does it get reflected in the people that we make bosses, the people that we make prime ministers and in charge of things? Do we still admire qualities in those people that are like ostensibly like selfish? You know what I mean? Can we reconcile that? It's like, it's one thing to be like, I'm not getting enough, but would you, where do we plot ourselves on that selfless versus selfish thing? And is it reflected in our politics? I'm asking the question, I guess.
No, I would say for the most part, no. I definitely understand idolizing people who have more than you. It's something to aspire to be. You know, you become the company that you keep. So I've heard plenty of stories of people who just happen to meet the right people. Honestly, look at Justin Trudeau's cabinet. His babysitter, his former babysitter, is the new finance minister. What? His bachelor, one of the bachelors on when he got married, is our current immigration minister. What? like you become the company that you keep. So that does matter. In terms of, I'm not a fan of wealth redistribution. I think it's yucky. I think it leads to laziness. And when people are lazy, they're stupid and they will follow anything and they have no desire to really live because they don't really live for anything. And that's really sad and depressing. It's one of the reasons why, and this is, I suppose, controversial depending what you want to apply it to, but I am personally at this stage in society pretty against paying, like I saw this in the States, how they were paying retribution for Black people, and it was white people who were white people who never owned slaves, whose families didn't ever own slaves, paying to Black people whose families were never slaves, but just because of their white and Black, we had to pay retribution. I don't like stuff like that. I don't like the welfare system at all. The welfare system has destroyed our society. It has done that in the US as well as Canada, and it's impossible to get off of. It is so freaking hard to get off the welfare system. Government dependency is the scariest thing in the world to me. Because we see what that looks like long-term in a society. When you have a society who has nothing to fight for, nothing to work hard for, nothing of meaning in their life, it's really scary. And I don't like that. So I think that, yeah, in some regard, it's good to idolize people who are doing better than you, because maybe that can help you to learn from them and become more like them and aspire to greater things that you are absolutely capable of. And to the contrary, I feel as though, all of these handouts from the government, while helpful, because yes, they are needed at times, the long-term effect on civilization of them does create dumber, weaker, lazier. And human beings, we do not have the brains to be dumber, weaker, and lazier. Like, that does not compute. That's not what we were designed for. And I mean, even, this is speculative, but if you even look at people who absolutely lose their cool, like these absolute mental breakdowns and whatever, and I'm not talking about ones regarding mental health at all, but mental breakdowns in terms of, like, you see like lefties losing it on Sky News Australia and some of the crazy things that people are doing. I really do believe that a lot of that probably does come from these people who are capable of so much more, but are being suppressed and told what to do and what to think and encouraged away from it. And like a child who has been in a crib all day and neglected and unloved, when they finally are around somebody who loves them and wants to give them a hug, you just see them explode with all of this because they were capable of so much more than what they were given. And I really do see like a big correlation with people who are just absolutely unhinged, totally extreme and radical, again, on both sides. And that really coming from a place of like, your needs are not being met mentally because you are being told and given, and you have no meaning or purpose. And that's a really scary place to be. And we see all around us how that affects people. Even let's think about the CERB payments with the government, the amount of people who were fraudulently collecting it. There was over 1,600 federal employees that got fired because they were fraudulently collecting CERB that was handed out during the pandemic. Why were people collecting that? Because why would I want to go work when I can sit on my couch and get paid still? I don't blame them for that. But the long term of that, of having things handed to you and not having meaning, is really, really scary. I don't know if that answered your question. Do we have democracy? Probably not really in its traditional form, but we're close.
Feels like corpocracy.
Yeah. There we go.
I think you did answer the question. You answered it well. And that kind of leaves it out there. Maybe we don't have democracy the way, like, maybe it's not as solid as we think it is, probably not even, maybe. Mm-hmm. And in terms of like, I just wanted to give like a real life situation. Like, I've been able to carve out quite a bit of free time for myself. And for somebody that cares about mental health, there's been times where, like, for hours I've had to speak with different people on the phone, and I believe that that's had a positive effect in some people, despite the fact that my lifestyle probably antithetical to other people. My work history is a lot of grinding, a lot of like construction and landscaping, and then I got education and things were different, but I know what it means to do a hard day's work. But given lots of time, I've found myself able to help in ways I wouldn't, and sit and introspect in ways that I guess you could qualify as work, you know. But it would be possible to approach me and say, you're lazy. Somebody could probably say that to me. But because the work that I do or what I'm up to might appear that way to them. I do think that there's a tendency for people that truly are, I suppose, like they're in a realm of taking advantage of things. Like they're not doing it for mental health reasons. They're not doing it for some greater purpose. They simply are doing it so that they can, they're full knowing they're taking advantage of something. I think we need to like stave away from that. And I do believe that in lack of meaning in life, things can get awfully dark, you know?
That's one of the things that makes it so difficult with so many of these federally funded programs in the welfare state. I'll just generalize it that way, is the fact that, we want people to thrive and we want them to have help. And we recognize that not everybody has the same opportunities. And we want to help them be the greatest them that they can be. At the end of the day, we want them to be happy and to thrive. But the way that these things are implemented right now, if anything, it encourages them to remain stuck in the same place where they needed to use it to begin with. And then it also damages the economy more. And so it's a really tough place for me because, you know, I suppose I come off as somebody who's like, cancel it all. But at the same time, I'm a human and I have a really big heart and I love people so much. And no, I want people to get the help that they need in whatever capacity that is. If I can give it to them, I want to give it to them because I don't want you to suffer. I don't want the poor to die because they don't have these programs. But this is more of something to think about but where is that line where you can definitively draw this is hurting you and this actually isn't helping you? And you need to have meaning and purpose. You need to work for something. Whether that something is God, whether that something is your family, you have to have something that you're aiming towards, because when you don't, things go very dark very quickly. And people do all sorts of really bizarre things and really bad things. And they hurt a lot of people when they don't have a higher aim at the very least. And that higher aim doesn't necessarily have to be working some crazy job either. That higher aim can be something as simple as just doing things for the people around you. And so even you say like, oh, well, you know, I know what it's like to work a hard day. Of course you do. And that's great. It's great that you have those skills, but, you know, the way that I'm kind of interpreting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, sure. I've done those things. I've worked hard. I know what that's like to put in that solid and to work hard. To me, your career is far less meaningful than your influence on the world around you and then having meaning. So when I say at least like people need to work hard for something, I'm not always relating that back to a job. I mean that so much more in just your brain and what you put out into the world. And that's the thing too. So many people think that like, oh, well, I'm nothing if I don't have this job. That's stupid because you're everything if you want to be everything.
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
Work hard to do that. So sorry.
It's more like finding your creative capacity. I've talked about that a lot in here. Like there's so much you can find in meaning in your life just by finding, you know, what you enjoy and doing it. Doing it to the fullest.
Not everybody can afford a therapist, and the bottom line is like some of the people you talk to, their thing is that they're like, I wake up every day and I go to work and I come home and that's my life. And like, but at the same time, that's another person's salvation. Like I'm not here to poo-poo people that you know have a career or work hard, I'm saying that I'm open to those that are a little bit. It can seem murky, like somebody's lifestyle can cause a lot of complicated feelings. What are you up to? What are you doing all day? You know what I mean? And there are people that are sitting around taking advantage, and there are people that are actually up to something. I don't know. That's the best I can do.
My last question for you here, Jasmin, would be: do you have any predictions for 2025? Across maybe the Canadian political landscape, America, where the world's headed, AI, aliens, anything.
Aliens. Okay. Wow. That's a whole other topic.
The drones in New Jersey. I don't know. They've just been in the news.
Those drones are wild. Predictions for 2025. Well, obviously in Canada, we are getting an election. Despite a lot of theories, I really highly doubt it will be before the slated date of October, which actually isn't even in stone yet. We just know it's going to be in October. I'm saying this wishful thinking, Lee. I really, really hope and I pray that in 2025, we have Donald Trump and his inauguration. And I know that Donald Trump is just a person, but the reason why he won is because of the things that he said and how that makes other people feel. It's not necessarily him. It's what he was saying and standing for that resonated. And he was a voice to people who felt really hopeless. And so we have that happening. And then we also have, realistically, by all accounts, we will have a conservative landslide in Canada as well. I think there's going to be a lot of really big changes that are absolutely going to shift us culturally and with our society as well. Those changes that I think we'll kind of get like the first footing of in the next year or so. I don't think we're really going to feel what that means for us until a few more years out. But my Lord, I really hope that people can start to kind of wake up to the fact that people you disagree with aren't evil. And Donald Trump isn't evil. Pierre Poilievre isn't evil. These are people who are a voice for people who feel like they don't have a voice right now. And that's really, really important. And people aren't hateful or bigoted for being grateful for that voice. And you can see with the landslide of how much people are just so tired of being told what to say. They're tired of governments and regulations being involved in our lives because we just want to be able to live. And so people will say all the time, like, oh, well, you know, if so-and-so gets in, then our rights are going to be taken. No, they're not, because the only thing that they want actually is for the government to stop being involved in how you live your life. By all accounts, I'll take their word for it. And so I really hope that over the next little while, we can really start to see that. And hopefully as a society as well, when you have these landslide victories that obviously signal a lot to the state of the world that, yeah, people are really rejecting this overpowering government who is regulating what you can say, what you can see, what you can do in some regards as well. And I hope that people wake up to that and like really realize that this isn't an us versus you. This is all of us against people wanting to take control more than they probably need to or should. So I'm really hoping that with the election, the inauguration, that shift will continue and we'll see the benefits of that in years to come. So I suppose that is my very hopeful prediction of what will happen. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Well, that's great. I think I just want to say thanks so much for being on the show with us today. This has been a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. I know Justin did. Maybe for our audience, you could let them know where they can find you, you know, what you got going on and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I have a show that is daily, but sometimes I forget on YouTube. So my show, it's just my username on every social media platform is Jasmin Laine. On X, it's Jasmin Laine _, no E at the end of Jasmin. My mom made it impossible to find little named souvenirs. Thanks, Mom. But yeah, I do that almost every day, with a few exceptions when I don't feel like it and I want to play Pokemon or something. And outside of that, though, I'm on social media, like everywhere you can possibly find, same username, Jasmin Laine. I like to discuss a lot of things politics. I do lean center right, I would say, for the most part, but we definitely do much deeper dives and not just things where it is some shocking, crazy clip of something that happened and there's just a little icon of me in the corner going, wow. No shade to the channels who do that. I admire them and love them all the same. But I like to talk. I like to think more than I probably should. It's a blessing and a curse. So if you enjoy conversations like that and like what we've had here today, then feel free to hop on over and I'll give you a big virtual hug for doing so.
Beautiful. Right on. Great. Thanks so much.